3, 2, 1.
Hi, welcome back to Show Me Trucks. In this video, I get into working on the LS engine again on the 36 GMC back here. Mainly wiring, but I also do some other little side projects on the floor, brake pedal and stuff like that. So let's get into this video. All right, welcome back to wiring up the 36. So I had already had this harness in my 67 before, but obviously the engine is now in my 36. So I just wanted to clean some stuff up. Obviously, I was using different wiring loom. I'm just gonna wrap it. A lot of this stuff was going to gauge clusters and stuff that I'm not using in this truck, so that's where a lot of that wiring is coming from. And to clean it up, I basically wanted to spread it out the way it lays in the truck. Headlight wiring, this usually goes up to your engine. The big thick wiring is battery cables that are going to the block. A lot of this is either going to the brake switch or was going up to the steering column, but obviously in the old school steering column, I'm not gonna have all this. So I'm gonna have to figure out different wiring buttons and stuff like that for turn signals. And then all this was a little chaotic before. So what I did is I pulled it all back, wrapped it up, tried to see which wire goes to everything on my relay. Because in the back of here, it's a little nuts because I messed up a couple plugs for my relays. So I had to, after I had everything nice and clean in there, I had to undo it while it was in the truck with not much space. So it got a little chaotic. So now everything's laid out straighter. Whenever I plug all this in and feed all these wires in, I can cut them all to length and make sure everything lays properly so you're not undoing a nest of chaos. This stuff is all GM harness, so it already looks a little nuts. Hopefully I don't have to extend too much because this was sitting in my glove box of my 67. My PCM was, and OBD2 port was in there, and my fuse panels were right there. So this is a little different now because the PCM is under the seat. This is under the seat. Hopefully all that reaches. We will see how it goes. This is some extra stuff. I think I'm going to have to run the headlight switch from the 67 in this truck. And I'm trying to decide if I'm going to put that in the glove box or if I'm going to try to find a way to mate it to the headlight switch on the 36. Before I can throw my wiring in, this is my PCM. My fuse panel is going to go right here, and everything's going to feed down and out and run along with the heater hoses. Before I could do that, the heater hoses sit on the bottom here. Let's see what you can see. There's a heater hoses sit on the bottom, so I needed those in before I run all my electrical because not the easiest to feed them in. And then over here is the accelerator pedal, little computer. So ran all that. I made this little mount, and then there's two little clamps to hold all this tight. So, and I just put that little pad underneath that so it doesn't rattle on there. And apparently those are a little prone to messing up if they have any movement. And then obviously it's a little crazy over there with the heater box because I just kind of set all the wiring on top of it until I decide what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to run that wiring out through here and then up into controls up in the glove compartment. Put everything in my little fuse. These are those Busman blocks into my little box that I made a long time ago. And so that's gonna mount in there. And then all this is gonna dump out the side. I ran everything that's going to the engine into this big grommet. But I think what I'm gonna do is undo all that tape. That way I know I have my full length. Most likely I might have to extend a couple things. So I might undo all that tape. Hopefully I could feed that in and not have any issues. This is the only plug, this transmission plug is the only one that I'm worried about not fitting through the hole because it was a little hard to get through there. But I do suggest feeding everything through the grommet before you try to put it in. It's not gonna be fun getting that grommet in, but you wanna know that you don't have issues later. And then there's another hole in that little drop down that I'm gonna feed my headlight wiring and all my other wiring that needs to come from the fuse panel out. I want my engine wiring to be its own separate setup. Starter to your ignition switch is in there, but everything else is basically your factory GM stuff. You know, your water sensor, your alternator, your throttle body, your O2, your fuel injectors, stuff like that. I kind of want it to be as simple laid out as it can be, so whenever you go to problem solve, you can kind of be like, oh, it's on this side, or no one wants to deal with electrical, so I want to keep it as simple as possible so people aren't scared of this truck. Well, wiring on wiring on wiring. Let me show you what I'm getting into. So, a reason not to throw away pretty much anything. This is the LS harness that I bought on the 4-wheel drive 5.3 liter. The harness is a little different, but someone had already cut some of these ends off. So, hopefully there's not anything real important. But for me, it's nice because I can steal that gauge wire and get the right color. And I'm only taking it off ends that have already been cut, so it's not ruining the harness. Hopefully I can still rework that harness and use it on, not this truck, on the Suburban. Basically what I've been doing, I know it's a little dark, so it probably doesn't look that good, but I've been trying to run everything where it needs to go. So a bunch of this runs up behind the catch can on the back of the engine. That way it tucks in. Most of my engine fittings are all right here. You know, your throttle body, map sensor, cam sensor. The only stuff that's really running up here is fan, headlights. I am going to run my starter wire up here and then the crank sensor up here and the water sensor. I moved to this corner. I know it's dark. Sorry, I'm kind of in the way. I'm going to run a mechanical water sensor up in the front over here. Most everything has kind of been put in place. So basically I ran everything up and then measured with another wire how much I needed to extend all these. So I got to extend some wires for sure. My alternator, definitely all the injector wires. MAP sensor just a little bit. It doesn't matter, like a little bit to a lot is not a big, it's the same thing, same amount of solder. and shrink wrap joints and all that. So it is what it is. So a lot of this has kind of been getting cleaned up. Hopefully you can see that. I wrapped the wire and tucked everything in that runs over to the plug on the transmission that tells your computer what gear you're in. And then also my O2 sensor wires are in that bundle also. And then over here, I'm gonna run a little junction box over here. I hope wiring's not getting boring for you guys yet. So let me show you what I'm working on. So I had to extend the fuel injectors. If you didn't know, sit up there, the little black plugs. So these are the normal fuel injector plugs for the 03. So they just kind of have this little support. I think it's so that you can pull it off easier. And there's another little clip that slides in here. So if you remove those two, it's still pushed in. There's these little, let's see if we can focus. There's little tabs that go into those slots. So I'm gonna run this little plug instead of running this huge plug that sticks out the top. More things you can do to clean up your harness. I think the only thing you had to kind of watch now, I just had to be a little more careful whenever you pull those plugs off of the injectors. There's still this little push tab. It lifts off and then you pull it out. So you just, obviously, like all plugs, you don't pull from the wires. Make sure and pull from the plastic. You'll just have less to hold on to. Cleaner look is important. So extended those. Let's keep going. How the original ones are. This piece kind of comes up. This is how I'm going to run it. You can kind of just run your wiring down the side right here instead of run your wiring down the side, you know, another 1.5 inches up. So let's keep cleaning this up. This is what the wiring on this LS is gonna look like. So like I said, I shortened those plugs up a little bit. That way all the wiring kind of hugs these fuel rails. So you don't really see much in there. Everything's just kind of loomed. I use this like cloth tape, which I like, but it doesn't sit down the best, but neither does electrical tape. And electrical tape sucks to take off. Your alternator setup, so your plug, you know, regulates your alternator. And I just kind of teed that all and ran all that into here so it's all smooth. And I want everything to be like whenever you take it off, you just set it back on there, kind of dummy proof the engine a little bit. So, yep, there she is. You don't see wiring hanging over your valve covers. You don't see too much in here, like I said. Air cleaner on. So, if you want that clean look, you gotta put in the work. So, I've been working on this for days. All right, so obviously, I'm not done wiring. I have to extend a bunch of these plugs. You know, these are your coil plugs. So, I'm gonna wrap up this video. This is where I've got to so far. I know I threw my heater hoses up here, but you saw I cleaned up the fuel injector wiring. So everything up top is done. I extended one of my coil plugs that goes into my relocated coils over here. Still digging in down here. Most of it is done. Extending the other coil setup. I think there's like 7 wires in each one of those. Kind of takes a second. The other stuff is heater. Headlight switch setup. I got to figure out exactly what I'm doing with that. And then the starter button. But it's coming along. Next video, I'll be wrapping that up. Hooking up this heater over here. Same thing. I just have some controls. And I don't think I'm going to even hook up all that. I think I'm just going to set the controls under the floor. And just have an on-off switch up under the dash. It's either going to be hot or not hot. You know, defrost doesn't matter on this whenever there's no vents up on your windows. It's either going to warm up your truck or not. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know wiring's not the most exciting, but hopefully this gives you a couple clues on what you can do to make your LS engine look a little better. And then also next video, I'll be tapping these fittings the rest of the way. That way it sinks in a little more. The 3/4 fitting doesn't seem to want to go in very well yet. So I'm going to have to tap that quite a bit more. This is my front floor panel, obviously wood. This is my brake pedal setup. So I didn't want to slot it like this. I have to run this in. I have a little cover plate and a little leather piece. It covers from the firewall side, and then I have another one that's going to cover from the cab side. I'm going to run this pedal in and mount up my cover and my accelerator pedal cover from the backside before I set all this in there. So let's get into that. So, thanks for watching. Later. Well, another little project. This is the emergency brake. I have this little like pulley system that runs to the cables for the rear axle. And then these bolts go into the linkage on the emergency brake. Well, I need a little pad because this thing will sit up right up on the cab. And I didn't want it bouncing off the cab and just making more noise than this truck's already going to make. So I had these. And I just ripped this rubber piece off. These are like under hood stoppers for like, I don't know, my 67. So that's my solution. And then this pin's a little bit longer so I can squeeze that together and then get my cotter pin in. So excited to find a cheap, simple fix that it already had laying around.